Every morning, a quiet boy sat alone in the corner booth of a dusty roadside diner. He never ordered. Never spoke. But a kind-hearted waitress fed him anyway, secretly, without asking questions. Until one morning. 4 black SUVs rolled up outside. Men in suits. Earpieces. Guns. And one woman who said just 4 words. "Where is the boy?" What was supposed to be another quiet breakfast turned into something far darker, and far more dangerous. Because this boy was not just a child. And what followed? No one in town would ever forget. Stay with us. What happens next will shock you. And trust me, you will want to see how this ends. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this story goes deeper than you think. The diner was small, nestled on the edge of a sleepy town, where nothing ever seemed out of place. The morning sun cast long shadows through the cracked windows, illuminating the rows of booths and worn-out tables. It was the kind of place where regulars came in every day, greeted by name, the smell of fresh coffee always filling the air. But there was one person who didn't quite belong, a quiet boy who always sat alone in the corner booth. He was no older than 15, with a pale face and dark eyes that seemed to watch the world from behind a veil of silence. No one really knew who he was. He never spoke. He only ordered a small bowl of soup or a cup of coffee, and sometimes, a slice of pie. The waitress, Linda, had noticed him months ago. At first, she thought he was just a loner. But there was something about him, something that tugged at her. Each morning, he would come in right at 8 a.m. He never made eye contact with anyone. Just sat there, staring out the window, lost in thought. Over time, Linda began to notice little things. The way his clothes were always too big. How his hands trembled slightly as he lifted the cup to his lips. She didn't ask questions. She simply did what she had done for years, served food, offered a smile, and moved on. But one day, she decided to do something different. Instead of just giving him the usual cup of coffee, Linda set down a plate of pancakes with syrup. The boy looked up, startled. His eyes met hers for the first time. He didn't say anything, but he didn't refuse either. That was the start. Every day after that, Linda would add a little extra to his order. A side of bacon. A biscuit with gravy. Sometimes, even an extra dessert. The boy always ate quietly, without a word. But he never left a tip. And still, Linda didn't ask questions. She just fed him. It became a routine. Linda never told anyone about the boy. It was her secret. The customers who came in for their morning coffee didn't seem to notice him. But she did. And as the days passed, she noticed something else. The boy was getting thinner, more gaunt. His clothes even more ragged. He looked like he hadn't had a proper meal in months. Linda couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One cold Tuesday morning, as the boy sat in his usual booth, 4 black SUVs pulled up outside the diner. The engines roared, their tires screeching on the pavement as they came to a halt. The air in the diner seemed to freeze. Linda felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't know why, but she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The doors of the SUVs opened, and a group of men stepped out. All dressed in dark suits, with sunglasses that obscured their faces. They moved like a pack of wolves, scanning the parking lot, then heading straight for the door. Linda's heart raced. She instinctively turned to the boy, who was now looking up at the men, his face pale and blank. But something was different. There was a flicker of fear in his eyes. One of the men stepped inside the diner, his gaze sweeping over the room. Linda froze, her breath caught in her throat. He stopped in front of the boy's booth. "Is this the one?" the man asked, his voice cold and clipped. Linda swallowed hard. The boy didn't respond. He simply stared at the man with wide, terrified eyes. The man nodded, and just like that, the boy's plate was cleared away. Two of the other men entered, their eyes never leaving the boy. The man who had spoken pulled a small black folder from his jacket and held it out in front of the boy. "Is this yours?" he asked. The boy's hands shook as he reached out. He looked down at the folder, his face unreadable. Then, with a single movement, the boy stood up. The men flanked him, guiding him toward the door. Linda couldn't breathe. Everything inside her screamed to stop them, but her feet were frozen to the floor. The boy's eyes met hers one last time before he disappeared out the door. And then, just like that, the SUVs roared to life again, speeding away into the morning fog. The diner was eerily quiet. The usual hum of conversation was replaced by an oppressive silence. Linda stood there, her hands still on the counter, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She didn't know who those men were. She didn't know who the boy was either. But in that moment, Linda felt a chill that wouldn't go away. She couldn't shake the feeling that the boy hadn't just been some lost soul looking for a meal. There was something much bigger at play here. She didn't know if she'd ever get the answers. But one thing was certain, nothing about the boy was as it seemed. And whatever had just happened, it wasn't over. The days that followed felt strange, like the town itself had slipped into a new, unsettling reality. Linda couldn't shake the images of the boy, the men in suits, and the mysterious black folder. She kept replaying the moment in her head, over and over, but every time, it only left her with more questions. She tried to return to her usual routine, but something was different now. The diner, once a place of comfort and routine, now felt suffocating. Every sound, every creak of the floorboard seemed amplified. Linda found herself constantly glancing toward the door, half expecting the SUVs to come back. But they didn't. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the memory of the boy began to fade. Life in the diner returned to normal, until one evening, when the phone rang. Linda wiped her hands on her apron, glancing at the clock. It was late, and the diner had been quiet for hours. "Diner," she answered, her voice low. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before a voice came through, raspy and unfamiliar. "We need to talk." Linda's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's about the boy," the voice said, barely a whisper. Her pulse quickened. "What do you know about him?" she asked, her mind racing. The voice chuckled darkly. "Everything you think you know is wrong. But I can help you understand." Linda's breath caught in her throat. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, her hands shaking. Who was that? What did they know about the boy? For days, Linda couldn't stop thinking about the call. She had to find out more. She couldn't just forget about him. She had to know what happened. Late one night, unable to sleep, Linda decided to take matters into her own hands. She drove to the address she'd found online, a place that had once been a small, run-down apartment building but was now deserted. It was dark when she arrived, the only light coming from the distant street lamps. The building looked abandoned, but something about it made her skin crawl. She hesitated, wondering if she should turn back. But the thought of the boy, and what might be hidden behind those suits and secrets, pushed her forward. Linda stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. She moved cautiously, every sense on high alert. As she approached the door at the end of the hall, she heard something, a soft, muffled sound, like someone was crying. Linda's heart hammered in her chest. She reached for the door handle, but it turned on its own. The door creaked open slowly. Inside, a single light bulb flickered above a small room. And in the center, sitting on the floor, was the boy. He looked up at her, his eyes hollow, his face even more gaunt than before. "Why did you come here?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Linda's throat tightened, but she forced herself to speak. I had to know. What happened to you? Why did they take you? The boy's eyes flickered to the corner of the room, where a black suitcase sat on the floor. Linda felt an uneasy chill creep up her spine. That's not mine, the boy whispered. Linda hesitated, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She stepped closer to the suitcase, her fingers brushing against the cold metal latch. As she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a collection of documents, photographs, and a small, unmarked envelope. She pulled it out, and as she opened it, her hands trembled. There was a photograph of the boy, but this time, he was not alone. In the picture, standing beside him, were the same men in suits. But the most chilling thing was the text printed on the back. Subject 004, activation complete. Linda's mind raced, trying to make sense of it. What does this mean? She whispered, more to herself than anyone. The boy stood up, his face clouded with fear. You shouldn't have come here, he said. Linda could barely process what she was seeing. Who are they? Who are you? The boy shook his head slowly. They've been watching me my whole life. But I didn't know, not until recently. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her, and Linda spun around, heart racing. From the shadows of the room, the men in suits emerged, their cold eyes locked on her. Linda backed away, her mind screaming for escape. But she was trapped. The leader of the men stepped forward, his expression unreadable. We were hoping it wouldn't come to this, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Before Linda could react, the boy stepped in front of her. Leave her alone, he said, his voice firm. The leader laughed softly. You think you have control here? You have no idea what's really going on. Linda's heart pounded as she realized the boy was no longer the scared, quiet child she'd known. He was something else now. And the men, they were here for him. For something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. Linda had just stumbled into a world she could never escape. The tension in the room was thick, like the air had turned to ice. Linda felt her breath catch in her throat, unable to look away from the men's cold, unfeeling eyes. The boy stood in front of her, his body tense, as if he were preparing for something unimaginable. The leader of the men studied him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, without warning, the man reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. It buzzed faintly in the silence of the room, a low hum that seemed to vibrate in the walls. Linda's heart skipped a beat. What is that? She demanded, her voice trembling. The man smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It's just a reminder, he said, of how little control you have here. The boy stiffened at the sound of the device, and Linda noticed his eyes darting toward the suitcase again. But this time, it wasn't the suitcase that caught her attention. It was the faint glow coming from beneath the bed, a soft greenish light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Linda's curiosity got the better of her. Without thinking, she stepped closer, ignoring the men, ignoring the growing fear in her chest. She crouched down and peered under the bed. And there, hidden in the shadows, was something she never could have expected. A machine. It was large, intricate, like nothing she had ever seen before. The wires, the blinking lights, the strange symbols etched into its surface, it looked almost alien. The boy's voice broke the silence. Don't touch it, he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. But it was too late. Linda's hand reached out, trembling, and as her fingers brushed against the cold surface of the machine, the room seemed to shift. The hum of the device grew louder, a deep, resonating sound that made Linda's head spin. She stumbled back, gasping for air, as a sharp pain pierced her skull. Her vision blurred, and for a moment, she thought she was going to pass out. But then, the pain stopped. And everything went still. The men in suits stood completely motionless, their eyes locked onto the boy. The leader's face tightened. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low and dangerous. The boy, however, didn't flinch. In fact, he seemed to be gathering some kind of strength. "I have to stop them," he muttered, his voice cold and detached. Linda's pulse raced. She didn't understand what was happening. But she could feel the shift in the air, the way the room seemed to change around them. Something was awakening, and it wasn't just the boy. The machine under the bed had a purpose Linda couldn't yet comprehend. The leader's smile faded, replaced by a look of deep concern. "We'll give you one last chance," he said, his voice hardening. But Linda could see it now, the fear in their eyes. The boy wasn't just a victim. He wasn't just some confused child. He was a threat. And the men knew it. Before Linda could react, the boy moved. He reached into the suitcase and pulled out a small device, similar to the one the man had been holding. With a swift motion, he pressed a button on the device. The room exploded with a blinding light. Linda had to shield her eyes, the brightness searing her vision. The men in suits were screaming now, their faces contorted in panic as they staggered back, hands raised to protect themselves. But the boy didn't flinch. He stood tall, unmoved by the chaos unfolding around him. The light began to pulse, faster and faster, until it became a strobe that seemed to distort time itself. Linda could feel the ground beneath her shaking, the air thick with electricity. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The light died. The hum of the device ceased. The men fell to their knees, breathless, their faces drained of color. And the boy stood there, untouched, his eyes filled with an intensity Linda had never seen before. He was no longer the quiet, frightened child. He was something far more dangerous. Linda took a step back, her mind spinning. What had he done? What had she just witnessed? The boy turned to her, his expression unreadable. "It's done," he said, his voice low and final. But Linda wasn't sure if he was talking about the men or something else entirely. Before she could say another word, the door behind them burst open. A new figure stepped inside. This time, it wasn't a man in a suit. It was a woman, tall, with cold eyes and a calm demeanor. She surveyed the scene, taking in the men on the floor, the boy standing in the middle of the room. Then her gaze shifted to Linda. "You," she said, her voice smooth, yet with an edge that made Linda shiver. Linda didn't know what to say, her throat dry. But the woman wasn't looking for answers. She was looking for control. "You've seen too much," the woman said, her smile chilling. Before Linda could react, the woman raised her hand, and in a flash, everything went black. Linda awoke to darkness. The kind of darkness that pressed in from all sides, heavy and suffocating. Her body ached. Her head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic pulse. She tried to move, but her wrists were bound tightly. A cold metal chair beneath her creaked as she shifted. She blinked, trying to adjust to the blackness, but there was nothing. No sound. No light. Just the echo of her own shallow breathing. Then, a sharp click. A door. Light flooded the room, searing her eyes. She winced. Footsteps echoed on concrete. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice, calm, calculated. "You were never supposed to be involved." The woman. The same one from the room. Now dressed in a sterile white coat, her expression unreadable. Linda struggled against the restraints. "Where am I?" she croaked. The woman stepped forward, clipboard in hand. "A secure facility," she said plainly. "You are here because you touched the machine." Linda's mind raced. "What is that thing?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, She walked in a slow circle around the chair. It is a conduit, she said. A gateway. A signal. We are still studying it. Linda's chest tightened. And the boy? The woman paused. Something flickered in her eyes. He is the reason we built the machine in the first place. Linda's breath caught. What are you talking about? He's just a kid. The woman shook her head slowly. No. He's not. He was created. Grown, not born. He was supposed to be a vessel. Linda's stomach turned. Created? For what? The woman leaned in. To receive something that does not belong in this world. Silence. The fluorescent light above buzzed faintly. Linda felt like she might vomit. She had fed that boy. She had cared for him. She had looked into his eyes and seen pain. Real pain. Not programming. Not science. Human pain. And now they were telling her he was not real. Where is he now? She demanded. The woman straightened, her face darkening. He escaped. Linda's heart skipped. He what? After the pulse event, he triggered a failsafe and vanished. We are tracking him, but he is evolving. Linda felt a chill crawl down her spine. Evolving how? The woman met her gaze. Every hour that passes, he becomes less human. The thing we meant to contain is now becoming him. Linda shook her head. No. That's not possible. He's still in there. I know it. The woman looked at her like one might look at a misguided child. You don't understand what he is carrying. The signal was not just data. It was a presence. Linda's throat tightened. She remembered the way the boy looked just before the light. The way his voice changed. The way the men had feared him. I want to help him, she whispered. The woman narrowed her eyes. You already have. Too much. With a nod, she turned to the wall. A panel slid open, revealing a wide screen. Surveillance footage. The timestamp blinked in the corner. It was live. On screen, a road winding through the woods. Night vision painted the trees in ghostly green. In the center of the frame, the boy. Walking. Alone. His posture was different now. Straighter. Confident. But his eyes, even in grainy night vision, looked wrong. They pulsed with a dull light. A glow that did not belong in any child's eyes. Linda stared at the screen, her breath shallow. What are you going to do to him? She asked. The woman folded her hands. Neutralize him. Before whatever is inside takes full control. No, Linda said, her voice sharp. You don't understand. He trusted me. The woman sighed. And that may be the only reason he has not already wiped us off the map. Linda froze. What do you mean? The woman turned, her voice quiet now. He had full access to the machine. To all of it. Yet, he left without destroying us. Maybe because of you. Linda felt something stir in her chest. Hope. Or maybe guilt. Maybe both. She looked at the screen again. The boy stopped walking. His head turned, slowly, as if he knew someone was watching. He stared directly into the camera. And he smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a human smile. It was a smile that promised one thing. He was coming back. The screen flickered. Static bled across the image for a split second. Then the feed cut to black. Linda leaned forward, heart pounding. What happened to the feed? The woman stared, lips pressed into a thin line. He cut the signal, she said. That should be impossible, another voice said from behind a row of monitors. A technician, younger, pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. He was not supposed to know where the surveillance nodes are. The woman stepped away from Linda and barked an order. Lock down every sector within a 50-mile radius. Now. The room erupted in controlled chaos. Alarms began to blink silently on the control panels. Agents with grim expressions entered through a side door, armed and already moving into formation. Linda watched it all unfold from her chair, still bound. Still powerless. Until the woman turned back to her. "We are done here." She gave a curt nod. An agent approached Linda with a syringe in hand. "No," Linda gasped, struggling. "I need to talk to him. He will listen to me." The woman paused. "You don't understand. He is not listening to anyone anymore. But if there's a part of him that still remembers me," Linda said, "then you need me." The room fell still for a beat. Then, the woman's eyes narrowed. She waved off the agent with the syringe. "Untie her." The agents hesitated. "You heard me." Linda's hands were released. She rubbed her wrists, the skin raw and burning. "I want to help," she said. The woman crossed her arms. "Then you will do exactly what I say." Linda nodded. But in her mind, another plan was already forming. The boy, whatever he had become, still had something human inside. She had to believe that. Even if no one else did. Hours passed. Linda was transported to a secure command vehicle, flanked by agents on all sides. The convoy rolled through a back road outside of town, headlights slicing through fog that clung to the forest like a veil. The air was thick, still. Everyone was tense. Then, static crackled in the radios. One by one, the agents lifted their earpieces, eyes narrowing. "Comms are down," someone said. "GPS too." The convoy slowed. The lead SUV stopped completely. Linda felt the shift before anyone said it out loud. "He's here," she whispered. A low hum began to rise in the air. Not from the vehicles. From the trees. The leaves trembled. The sound, like 1,000 whispers layered into one. Then, light. A brilliant greenish glow radiated from deep in the forest. Pulsing. Alive. The agents poured out of the vehicles, weapons raised, moving silently into formation. Linda climbed out too. The woman grabbed her arm. "You stay close to me. Do not move unless I tell you." But Linda was already moving. Drawn toward the light. Toward him. She stepped between the trees. The glow grew stronger. And there, in the center of a clearing, stood the boy. His eyes shimmered with that unnatural light. But his face was calm. He looked at her like he had been waiting. "Linda," he said. Her name and his voice shattered the silence like glass. It was him. Still in there. "I thought they hurt you," he said. His voice echoed, not just in the air, but inside her skull. "I'm fine," she said softly. "You don't have to do this." He tilted his head. "They want to destroy me. Because they don't understand what I am." "I don't care what you are," Linda said, stepping closer. "You're not a weapon. You're not a project. You're a person." He lowered his gaze. For a moment, the light in his eyes dimmed. "I remember the pancakes," he said quietly. "Every morning. You smiled at me." Tears welled in Linda's eyes. "I meant every one of those smiles." A rustle behind her. The woman. Agents flanking the trees. Guns raised. "Take the shot," someone whispered over the comms. "No," Linda said, turning. "Do not shoot." The boy looked up again. The glow in his eyes now surging. But not with rage. With sorrow. "Let them," he said. Linda spun back. "What? I don't want to hurt anyone. But I can't control it much longer." His body trembled. Energy pulsed from his skin like heat waves. "They put something inside me. Something alive. And it's waking up." He took a step back. "If they shoot, it takes over." Linda's heart stopped. Every trigger finger in the trees twitched. One wrong move. One false breath. And the boy would be gone. Or worse, something else would take his place. She had only one chance left. And she took it. She stepped forward. Wrapped her arms around him. Held him. Tight. Like he was just a boy again. He shuddered. Whispers in the trees fell silent. The light flickered. Then dimmed. And for a heartbeat. Everything was still. The stillness was unnatural. Like time itself had frozen to watch. Linda held him, feeling his body shake beneath her arms. But not from fear. From restraint. From a war waging inside his very bones. The glow in his eyes sputtered like a dying ember. His breath came in ragged gasps. "I can feel it," he whispered into her shoulder. "It's trying to get out." Linda clutched him tighter. "You are stronger than it. You always were." He winced, doubling over slightly in her arms. Veins along his neck pulsed with that unnatural green, lighting up for a moment, then dimming again. Behind them, the woman raised her hand. The agents held their aim. Tense. Frozen. "I do not want to lose myself," he said, his voice shaking. "You will not," Linda said firmly. "Not if you keep holding on to this. To me." Suddenly, a sharp, piercing noise, like feedback from a broken speaker, tore through the clearing. The boy screamed, collapsing to his knees. The light in his eyes flared violently. Trees shuddered. The ground cracked beneath them. Linda dropped with him, shielding his head. "No, no, no, stay with me," she shouted. The woman barked into her comms, but the signal was gone again. Every device went dead. The agents faltered. Then came the voice, but it was not the boy's. It came from everywhere. 1,000 tones in one. A presence, riding the sound. "The gate has opened. We are here." The boy's mouth moved, but the voice was not his. Linda pulled back, eyes wide in horror. The light in his veins surged. Shapes began to flicker behind the trees. Shadows, tall and slow-moving. Silent. Observing. Not human. Not animal. Something else. The woman stepped forward, weapon raised. "Take him down now," she ordered. But Linda turned, placing herself between the boy and the rifles. "Shoot me first," she said. The agents hesitated. Torn. The boy's body began to levitate, inches off the ground. Green tendrils of energy flowed from the earth, wrapping around him. The presence was trying to complete the transition. Trying to consume what remained of his humanity. Linda grabbed his hand. Fingers ice cold. But still gripping back. "You can fight it," she whispered. The presence hissed through the trees. "She is nothing. Let go." But the boy's hand tightened. His head twitched, once, twice, then snapped up. For a brief second. His eyes were back. Clear. Terrified. Human. "Linda," he said, through gritted teeth. "I remember your laugh." The wind howled through the trees like a scream. The sky above twisted unnaturally, stars spinning in wide, slow arcs. But Linda smiled through her tears. Then you are still in there. And just like that, the glow in his body began to fade. The tendrils receded into the soil. The hovering stopped. The boy collapsed into her arms. Unconscious. Breathing shallow. But himself. The silence returned. The shadows vanished between the trees. The sky slowly realigned. Then, the woman lowered her weapon. Everyone did. Linda cradled the boy, rocking him gently. She looked up at the woman. He is not just some vessel. He is a person. The woman said nothing. Only stared at the child in Linda's arms with a storm of unreadable thoughts behind her eyes. But she did not stop Linda when she stood up. Or when she began to walk out of the forest. Carrying the boy. Toward the dim headlights of the convoy still waiting on the road. But Linda knew this was not over. Not even close. Because whatever had come through was not gone. Just waiting. Watching. And it had seen her. That night, the sky remained clear. But something in the air had shifted. Linda sat in the back of the SUV, the boy wrapped in a thermal blanket beside her. His head rested on her shoulder. Still unconscious. Still breathing. But deeper now. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. As if something inside him was holding its breath. The woman rode in the seat ahead, silent. Staring out the window. One hand rested on a metal case by her side. A case marked with a symbol Linda did not recognize. Sharp edges. Not military. Not scientific. Older. Like a seal. Linda felt her skin prickle just looking at it. The boy stirred. His fingers twitched. A pulse of light ran beneath the skin on his wrist, brief and soft. Like a flicker of memory. Linda glanced up. The woman had noticed it too. But she said nothing. Just gripped the case tighter. The convoy stopped at a checkpoint deep in the forest. Tall floodlights pierced the night. Concrete barriers. Guards with blank stares. Unmarked trucks. It was not a government site. Not one Linda had ever seen. And she had seen a lot. They were escorted out, the boy carefully lifted onto a stretcher. He whimpered as they touched him. A faint sound, almost instinctual. Linda reached for his hand again. He gripped back. Weak, but deliberate. The lead guard motioned her to stop. She turned, eyes blazing. I am not leaving him. The woman behind her nodded once. She stays. And they led them both inside. The hallway walls were metal. Smooth. Cold. Seamless. No signs. No doors. Just a single path that seemed to go downward. Far deeper than it should. The boy opened his eyes for a moment. They were dim. But clear. Where are we? He asked. Linda brushed a hand through his hair. Somewhere they think you can be safe. He tried to smile. Safe for them or for me? That question hung in the air. Unanswered. The elevator stopped. A chamber opened. Inside. A circular room. Dark walls lined with strange devices. None of them powered on. But all of them pulsed faintly. As if waking up from a long sleep. The agents placed the boy in the center. On a platform surrounded by glass. Thick. Reinforced. The woman finally spoke. This is where we learned how to listen. Linda frowned. Listen to what? She turned, eyes glinting in the dim light. To the voices behind the stars. Linda stepped forward. I thought you said he was a vessel. The woman nodded. He is. But now, she looked at the boy, voice tight. He may also be the last chance to close what we opened. The lights in the chamber dimmed. A vibration ran through the floor. Low. Deep. Steady. The machines lit up, one by one. Symbols scrolled across their surfaces. Not letters. Not numbers. Something older. Linda moved toward the glass. The boy looked up at her. His lips parted. But he said nothing. Only stared. And in that stare, she saw something new. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Then, the lights snapped off. Total blackness. A scream echoed through the chamber. But it was not from him. Not from Linda. It came from one of the machines. The machine itself screamed. When the lights flicked back on, the glass was cracked. Spiderweb lines across every inch. And the boy? He was standing. Eyes wide open. Hands glowing. Mouth unmoving. But a voice speaking through the room. It has learned to speak through me now. And it remembers you, Linda. Her heart froze. The woman backed toward the door. Every agent raised their weapon. But none of them fired. Because their rifles began to melt. One by one. Dripping like wax in their hands. The boy turned. Looked straight at Linda. And said, "Run." Linda did not move. She could not. Her feet felt rooted to the ground, like the floor itself was clinging to her. The boy stood within the cracked glass chamber, glowing faintly. But his voice, his face, was still his. Still human. The machines around them began to vibrate violently. Lights pulsed erratically. Panels on the walls sparked and hissed, symbols flashing too fast to read. The agents retreated. Even the woman, so composed, so certain, took one slow step back. But Linda stepped forward. Toward him. "No more running," she said softly. The boy's glow flickered. As if something inside him recoiled, or listened. "They want to use you or destroy you," Linda said. "But I see you. You're not a gate. You're not a weapon. You're a child." His fingers twitched. For a moment, the room seemed to pause. Even the machines went still. "I do not know how to stop it," he whispered. "You do not have to," she said. "You only have to choose." Silence. Then, he reached out his hand. Fingers trembling. And Linda reached back. The moment their hands touched, light exploded through the chamber. But it was not violent. It was warm. Like sunlight through a cracked window. The glass around him shattered, falling away like petals. The walls dimmed. The machines powered down. One by one. The pulse beneath the floor ceased. The room exhaled. And then, the boy collapsed into Linda's arms. Unconscious again. But this time, peaceful. The woman stepped forward. Face pale. Eyes searching. "What did you do?" she asked. Linda held the boy close. "I reminded him who he is. He did the rest." A long silence passed between them. Then, the woman gave a slow nod. She turned to the agents. "Stand down. All of you." Weapons lowered. The threat had passed. At least for now. They left the facility before dawn. No one spoke during the drive. The boy remained asleep, head on Linda's lap. When the convoy reached the edge of the woods, Linda stepped out. She carried him in her arms again. Just like she had that night in the clearing. The woman approached once more. There will be people who come for him, she warned. Linda looked up. Eyes fierce. Let them try. She turned away. Walked into the early morning light. Mist curling around her feet. The boy stirred. He opened his eyes. And smiled. And somewhere, in the quiet stillness of dawn, the universe held its breath. The end.